everybody else, but my clock says that we are at 11. So I'm going to go ahead and share here. All righty, so let's go ahead and get this meeting going. First, we'd like to open up. Is there anything that anybody would like to bring to the committee? Okay, not hearing anything. Let's go on to new business. Just a reminder, regional refreshes are coming up at Poplar Bluff on March 15th and Barry Lawrence on March 30th. Leanne, tell me how many people are signed up at Barry Lawrence so far?
It looks like we've got between 20 and 30 now. I think we're about 26 or 7 at this point.
Okay, great. So if you are thinking of joining us there is still room for sure. Belinda, I think you were on the call too. What about Poplar Bluff?
We have about 12, I think, all told. So we have plenty of space left. That's March 15th. If anybody wants to join us, they can just shoot me an email.
Okay, that would be great.
Is it okay if I send the file to you, Belinda, and to you, Leanne, to the agenda to print, since you'll know how many people are going to be there?
Yeah, we'll be glad to print anything.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, hopefully it's going to be a great day. I don't know where you are in the state and what it is there, but it's supposed to be like 64 here in Kansas City. So I think at my lunch hour, I'm going to get out and enjoy. So hopefully it'll be a great day like that, not snowy or stormy, but we're going to hope for the best. Number 2 on there, and Mickey might want to address this, is we have the first annual Missouri Evergreen Users Conference coming up April 13th and 14th in Columbia. So Mickey, could you tell us a little more?
Sure, of course. It's open to all members and it's free. We've had a few people ask about that. If you're associated with Missouri Evergreen, then this conference is for you, whether you're a staff member, director, whatever. There's going to be something for everything. The circulation group has a lot of good information to share. Diane is going to do a session and we're also going to have Evan Seckler from Poplar Bluff do a session on carousel setup. So lots of good stuff that's very practical. Our cataloging team is also going to be heavily involved in the session work, and we also have some administrative sessions. So it's all coming together very nicely. I think there's going to be something for everyone. We have Katie Greenleaf Martin from the PALES Consortium in Pennsylvania, who's going to come and share a little bit with us about how her consortium operates, and maybe we can pick up a few tips. And she said she's eager to learn what we're doing as well. So a lot of variety, I think a lot of interest. It runs all day Thursday and half day on Friday. It is a hybrid event, which means you do not have to be there in person. You can come in person or attend the sessions remotely. We will have Zoom links all set up and we'll get those out in mid-March so that everybody's able to connect with the sessions. I encourage everyone to attend. Certainly if you're a staff person at a library, be sure to check with your supervisor or director to make sure that you can get time away from your responsibilities to attend the sessions. You certainly don't have to attend everything. You can pick and choose from what you want to come to. And we do encourage you, however, regardless of whether you're coming in person or remotely, to register for the conference now. And you can do that by going to the website, and I'll put a link in the chat for that. Thank you very much, Rhonda.
I'm looking forward to it. It'll be nice to have face-to-face contact instead of, I mean, Zoom is better than nothing, but person to person is always much more fun. All right, so there has been some chat going back and forth about handling new card requests for patrons who already have an account with another Missouri Evergreen library. So Mickey kindly came up with this starting point for a possible wording for a recommendation. I don't know if it would be a recommendation or if we would end up putting this eventually into the CERC policy, but his wording is there on the screen. I have highlighted outstanding charges because there was a little bit of discussion going back and forth about what that actually means. So I'd kind of like to open it up for discussion so that we can get a better feel on, do we want to change some of that wording? Do we want to drill down a little bit and make it more specific, or leave it as is?
I think when we were kind of doing it before ad hoc, it was if they had blocked or barred status at that other library. We don't have as much crossover because Scenic is the closest to us, and like Festus, et cetera, our people don't jump around as much with it. But somebody moves to St. Louis area from Kansas City and they owe 20 cents over there. I don't want to deny them a library card until they pay the 20 cents over there to chase them. So I'm personally think it makes more sense to do it if they have a blocked or a barred status at that original library, to try and get that resolved, as opposed to we're going to waste a ton of staff time trying to chase down $3. You're going to pay me more than the $3 to get that $3.
So Meredith, are you thinking blocked according to your policies blocking, or blocked according to the original library's policies?
I'm open to either way. I mean, we've generally, I think, kind of ad hoc interpreted to here. If they wouldn't be blocked here, then we wouldn't not issue them a card, but whatever the will of the whole is on that. Me personally, I think that's a better metric, whether or not it's your home or the original library's metric to use for denying service.
So you're saying that your library, if they wouldn't be blocked at your library, you would go ahead and proceed?
We kind of we've case by cased it too, and in situations where people have obviously a significant history at their home library or whatever too, we've talked to them and done that kind of stuff too, as we all do with it. I just hate us being at a point where we're trying to chase down a couple bucks from somebody that's moved across the state, and that just seems like a hurdle to put in with the way of people's library service that is not cost effective or efficient for us either.
Yeah, I agree as far as going with your own systems policies, just for simplicity, because your staff knows what, your policies are as far as handling circulation. Because, for instance, with us, if there's any charges, if they owe for a book, we don't do fines at our library, but if they do owe for like a damaged or lost book, then, they're not able to use our library. So we would, if they had a lost item from another library, we would not, in our case, issue them a card for our library. And also, I think we need to clarify that the charges, if they do owe, need to be done through the library that had the charges originally, because I believe that we're not supposed to take money from that's owed to another library.
Okay.
So maybe at the end of the first sentence there, we could add something that says a new account could be created as long as patrons do not have outstanding charges on other Missouri Evergreen accounts that exceed the fine threshold of the new home library.
Yeah, we have to do like a fine/fee threshold.
Hi there, how are you?
Fines/fees. Okay.
Just for the overdue the lost in the building, that deal.
Okay. That's a good way to. Okay.
I have one more thing I wanted to add, Rhonda, if that's okay. And this came from my past experience working with other consortium, and that has to do with accepting payments for other libraries' charges from a patron, for example, in Meredith's example that's moved from Kansas City to St. Louis or St. Louis to Kansas City. The chances of that patron actually going back to that library and being able to physically somehow reconcile those charges can be really overwhelming. I mean, the difficulty of it. So what our libraries in the previous consortium I worked with worked out was an arrangement where if the charges to be paid off were more than $10, then the library would collect them from the patron and send them, or ask the library in question, do you want this to send you your $10? If it was less than $10, the library was notified by email, but the charges stayed with the collecting library. Otherwise, it was a real hardship on the patron. So again, this is up to you all, and I'm not going to say one way is better than the other. But just bear in mind that sometimes when someone moves, when a patron moves to another location, it is literally impossible for them to go back to the original library where there may be fines or fees that need to be reconciled.
Good point. All right, so my next question is this something that we are doing as merely a recommendation or best practice, or is this something that we're looking at to actually move into the Missouri Evergreen circulation policy?
If it's going to be added to a policy, then we're going to have to recommend to the board and the board would have to approve it.
Right,
Isn't that right?
yes,
And I think I have heard objections from other libraries that say they don't look at patrons' previous history because it's an invasion of privacy or something. So I think if we change it from a recommendation to a policy point, we're going to have a larger conversation. I'm not opposed to that. I'm just saying I think that's what will happen.
And I think if I remember right, some of the initial conversation that came from the emails was just the fact that it wasn't documented anywhere at all.
yes, yes.
So perhaps if we get into that best practices, that rubric now as a phase one, see if that kind of nips some of the concerns that people have in the bud. We could always policy it as a phase two, but this way it's written down somewhere so people have that referral point to go to, if that makes sense.
I think that's a good idea, Meredith. The other thing I'm considering is, do we need to add another document? And I think we maybe even need to go back to what is on that circulation training page in general and kind of clean it up. And I mean, it's getting more and more and more things. And to me, it's not necessarily organized in the most efficient way. It's because we've added things, over time, but I'm wondering if we just need a page that's recommendations, or as opposed, what we have now is that Missouri's, best handling, in materials best handling document, but I don't know, does this fall into materials best handling, or is this something
We could
different?
make an overall best practices section and or document, and then that would be a chapter. This would be a chapter or a section in it. And then it's something that can be built upon and be kind of like a living document.
Yes, I think that sounds good to me. What does the rest of the committee think?
I agree.
Okay, Diane?
Yeah, I think so too. There is a best practices, materials handling best practices that is part of the policy. So that would have to be kept together. The one that we have about damages that includes pictures. Well, I think that was made part of the policy too, though, wasn't it?
No,
Does it know
I think the policy refers to that as a document, as a supplemental with it.
Yeah.
The policy part's a little more vague and big picture.
Yeah, so that stuff, all the stuff about AV needs to be packaged and don't put tape on anything.
Yeah, that's in the
that's
best
part of the policy. So
Well, it's an informational piece that is referred to from the policy. So it's something that can be adjusted without going to the board. Was the way.
right. But that is at least something that everybody has to abide by. But if we create this as a recommendation, so this would be separate from that.
Right. Okay, does that sound good to all the committee then?
Yeah, this is Brian. I think that makes sense. Not to be a downer, but it seems like there's going to continue to be these problems where the different libraries aren't going to be on the same page as far as charging fines of different amounts. I don't really have a solution to that, but I think the wording as you're proposing it does make sense.
Okay, thanks. All right. I think I have a clear picture on that, and we'll come back with the finalized thing. I'll try and do better this time. We were down to the last minute trying to get this purging account thing done, but I'll try to do better on trying to get something out to the committee so that we can kind of get a finalized thing to present next month at the CERC committee meeting. All right, so moving on to updating staff accounts. So we all got the big surprise, or not all, some of us got a big surprise on Friday when we came in and we couldn't log into our accounts. And I felt like, okay, this is really on, I mean, it happened to us. So I felt like, okay, this is on our admin. I had no clue we needed to go in and update that account. So there's been some discussion. Diane, you sent out an email just, was it Friday or Monday? I don't know what day. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, that was recommending, and this came from the executive board, that recommending that all libraries run a report to see what their staff permissions are. Nobody's made a huge mistake. You just made little mistakes along the way, perhaps assigning the staff permissions that you didn't really mean to. So if you would run a report to see what your staff has permissions to do, and that email told you which reports you could run, and when you're choosing the limiters, you can put all the staff things in there, even if you think we don't use acquisitions. So I don't have a staff member that has acquisitions permissions. You might, because just something happened. So when you run the report, include all the staff permissions to find out what permissions have been assigned to your staff. And this is coming from a bigger picture. We've asked Equinox to help us figure out what staff permissions our staff need. And the board will come up with recommendations for existing and new libraries. So you'll know what's the best to get the best, to make it most efficient for your staff. But you need to know what permissions you have now before we know if they need to be changed. And it is possible to limit the permissions that your staff see when they're registering patrons or when they're registering a new staff member, so that you won't be confused by things you don't want to use, or you can't select something incorrectly because it's just not an option. And I sent pictures of how to do that through local administration and showed you what Scenic has. Our staff can only see 3 permission groups, so they can't randomly assign non-resident as a permission group because our non-residents have permission to do everything everybody else does. And you can limit yours as well so that your staff won't be confused.
Okay, so if you didn't catch that email, or you weren't on the listserv to get that email, and you would like to have the information that Diane sent out, Diane, is it okay if they email you to
Yes.
maybe
yes.
get that again?
Yes, please do. And if you don't feel comfortable running that report to see what your staff has permission to do, I'll be glad to run it for you and forward you the results. So my email is, this is pretty complicated now. It's ddisbro@scenicregional.org, and I'll put that in the chat.
Okay, so just going back and forth, things that I saw on emails going back and forth this kind of since this occurred, is that login accounts are set up similarly to a patron account and can be searched for under patron search. So let me see here. If you don't find your admin accounts via the username, you can try to search by profile group, such as cataloging administrator, circulation administrator, local or system, a local system administrator. All of those are ways that you could search for that. Or if your library migrated to Missouri Equinox, to Missouri Evergreen prior to Equinox, those accounts are usually set up with user as the last name. So that might help you find those things also. Take advantage of Diane's information and we'll get it all straightened up here. So, all right, going on to old business. We finally, I think, come up with our recommendation. And so you can see what we have come up with there. I've included the retention guidelines that we received from the state. Diane, was that from the state library?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a link there. It's on page 5. Meredith read through that whole thing. Thank you, Meredith. And found it on page 5. They recommend actually every 2 years. But so I think we're safe with doing the 3-year threshold there. So among the committee, reading through that, are we good with saying this is our recommendation?
Do we need a bin in between the have and expired, or am I just being semantically difficult?
Oh, yeah. It's because I was cut and pasting early or doing it first thing when I didn't have time this morning. So yes, I think there probably should be.
Okay.
Other than that. Okay, I think what I'm going to do when I send it on to Ron to post is go ahead and reference that retention guidelines document so that it's clear to Missouri Evergreen at large that we didn't just pull this out of the air somewhere. There is actually a guideline done by the state.
I'm just being the devil's advocate person that trying to think through questions people will ask.
Sure.
On that last one where it says an exception will be made for accounts that have bills and accounts that have been barred. When we've done internally, we've only done them if they've been blocked for the bills. First question you're going to get back is, am I not supposed to do it if they owe $1 with it too? Or do we want to put something vague that exceptions can be made? Or make that a more of a flexibility there? Just trying to think through the questions that you're going to get back 2 seconds after you send out the email.
Yeah, exactly. Since it's a recommendation, I think that would be
And maybe change the would to the could.
could. Mm-hmm.
And then that way people they have that flexibility to adjust that threshold for whatever.
Now, this also implies that we are going to be moving to action at some point. That means that we're going to ask Equinox to do a system-wide purge. So bear in mind that this recommendation will probably sit out there for a little bit, and we'll certainly invite everyone to have their views shared about it and express their opinions. But at some point, we are definitely going to move to action on this. So bear that in mind, committee, that we need to talk about that and how that's going to work.
Okay, Mickey, so you're sure that it's not going to be just if a library wants to do this, it's going to eventually be something that Missouri Evergreen as a whole is going to do?
I think the board has shown no inclination to let this be a library by library decision. I think the board has said, look, you know, if we're going to come to a decision about purging the database, it needs to be done on our shared database. It is, after all, a shared database and is exposed to everyone. So that's why the board wants, I think, a decision based on that.
And I think Equinox, I had some communication with them. And if I remember right, they were not interested in doing it library by library either. Like Mickey said, it's a big shared database that. to
I
break it
think it's
down.
still gonna have to be some library by library, because you're still gonna have qualifiers locally for what is your fine threshold that you want to keep with it and what is your barred thing, and you're never gonna get all these libraries to agree to that. I think you're gonna be able to get people to generally agree to the time period and that kind of stuff. where maybe Equinox does the purge of everybody based that doesn't have the fees or the block status. And then those are more of an individual where they give us a list and we deal with that one-on-one or whatever with it too. But you're never going to get everybody to agree on that because everyone has different fine thresholds and where they draw the line on trying to remember a patron who owes you $400 from 1999 for their stuff they never returned.
Exactly.
Agreed. It's a baby steps kind of thing, but you're right, Meredith. The step we can take is to purge those accounts that don't have any impediments or hindrances and go ahead and do that universally. I think that's the first step.
So this would be something that membership would meet, or directors at least would be made aware of before it happened. It wouldn't just be one day you wake up and all these things are gone.
Yeah, I think we've learned our lesson from that last Friday experience. We'll take lots of time to communicate about this, make sure everybody is on board, and we won't take any action on it. We'll just point towards a place where we are going to take action, make sure that that information is well communicated to everyone before we do so.
And I think in those communications too, if you put a point on, if you want control over what is happening, review this one-on-one yourself and make your adjustments. And then you know that you have clean data going forward or whatever with it too. If people have-
Excellent. I agree.
Diane also again contacted Equinox, and this was the response she got about purging accounts. So I'm just going to read what it actually said. Purging accounts wipes out all identifying information for the patron. All the data remains except for anything that would associate an individual person with that account. The person becomes anonymous. The name is changed to purged. The patron addresses are removed. So think of it as just wiping the record clean of any identifying pieces, but everything else remains, so it still shows as a number of the circulation counts. So the benefits are for your patrons and their privacy. It's so you have no history of them. Deleting just sets a flag on the account as deleted, so the account won't show in searches, but it still actually exists, and you can see it if you run a report on patrons and ignore the deleted flag on them. So a regular deleted patron is not anonymous any longer. And so one of the main reasons for doing this is, God forbid, we have a data breach at some point. But then it really does clean up our account, our records. It keeps it current, and all those patrons who no longer are using the library do not have to be contacted if there's some kind of breach.
Can I ask
Okay.
a dumb question?
Yeah.
I was following along with this too. We have never, and I don't know if it was intentional, it may have been here, had the choice to just delete people. Ours is only completely purged. I don't know even how you delete someone. So, because the completely purge is the only choice we have.
You can delete using a user bucket.
Oh, okay, that's why, because I don't use the user. record. But in the individual record, you don't have an option to delete. You just have to.
No,
Right.
no.
Okay,
that's
cool. That was the
all-
path I was familiar with. I was just wondering if I was missing something flaming.
No, that's the one at a time, one at a time, one at a time that I've been having staff do here, running a report every month and sending it out to the branches. So I told them this can be done in one fell swoop by Equinox, and they were delighted, but it may be a while before they do that. So I might have to, well, I don't know what I'll do, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and Equinox did it one-on-one for our library, and they may be regretting that they opened that door and that I told people that they did it for us. But they've done it for us, I think, twice.
Okay.
Mobius would never do that because they told me they didn't want to do something that later I said, oh gee, I wish I hadn't told you to do that. So Mobius would not do that. And then when I asked Equinox and they said, yeah, we'll do that. And we recommend doing that. I was surprised.
All right. So with those changes, we would add in the word bin, accounts that have been expired, and then an exception could be made for accounts that have been billed. So is everybody's good with that then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
All right. moving on to other, is there anything else that anybody would like to bring before the committee? I don't hear anything, so with that, do we have a motion to close our meeting?
Rhonda, actually, I
Yeah.
thought of something. I'm
Okay,
sorry to
go-
keep
go
it
for it.
rebel, but this is fairly important, and I know that Leanne's in the meeting too. Some of you may have seen the email I sent recently about revitalizing the onboarding committee and changing its focus a little bit on helping new libraries with new staff members, new directors, sort of learn the Missouri Evergreen way. And we feel that's a really important thing to help our existing members with staff turnover, because it really is a tremendous problem when it comes to learning the ropes about how Missouri Evergreen works. And I think the onboarding committee, working in tandem with the other committees, with the board and with other members, can really make a significant difference in this regard. And so I'm asking people to step up. And Leanne has already, I think, had a couple of people say, yeah, I'd like to be part of that onboarding process and that new focus. So I'd invite anyone in this meeting to consider that as well. Take a look at the email that I sent out yesterday that describes what the focus of the onboarding committee is. Leanne has graciously consented to stay on board as chair, and she is going to hopefully be adding new members, and we'll all be working together to try and improve the process of preserving our institutional knowledge. There's so much of it over 10 years, and we don't want to lose it. Thank you.
Sure, Leanne would be thrilled if you wanted to join. That would be helpful to not just her, but also to incoming libraries. And we've got 5 incoming libraries this year. Plus, during the year, we have personnel changes, people moving on. This year we had the death of a library director. So just a lot of knowledge that there's a void there. And so if we can have that kind of nailed down a little bit, that'd be wonderful. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that, yeah, if anyone is interested, just email me at leanne@blrlibrary.org, and that's, my email is actually on the agenda here, so, and I'll put it in the chat as well.
All right, anything else?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Great. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so I'm declaring this meeting adjourned. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy the beautiful day.
Yeah,
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Bye.
Bye-bye.